Story 1. I have an instinct to fear it, but I'm not actively afraid of it because I won't experience it. I fear the pain and suffering leading up to it, but I don't fear it any more than I fear not being born. I fear not living properly before it comes. I do fear that. Story 2. I'm not afraid of death because it's a natural part of life. I believe we fall asleep forever. However, I am concerned about the impact my death will have on my children. I was recently diagnosed with stage 2 cancer, and I do not yet know how invasive it is due to nerve involvement. This cancer has the potential to metastasize. If I am fortunate enough to pass away in a non-abrupt way, I will ensure my children receive therapy and have the support they need. My body will eventually fail, hopefully not soon, but it is inevitable. I just want my children to have the emotional tools to process this in a way that will not harm them. Story 3. Because I won't be there when it happens. It's the dying part I'm not looking forward to. Quick and in my sleep, hopefully. Story 4. Because I know this is not the end. Everything will happen repeatedly until you decide to stop it. It may sound spiritual, but if you know. Story 5. We all feel a bit afraid of the uncertain, but I have tried to release my worry by letting go of control. I accept it without allowing its mystery to overwhelm me with anxiety. Story 6. They don't say rest in peace for nothing. Death has to be easy because life is hard. Puya. Story 7. 2 reasons. First, everyone is going to die eventually, just as everyone breathes. It is illogical to fear a universal constant. All you gain is more stress for the years you are alive, and you should savor them. Second, as a Christian, if I believe in God and stay faithful and good, then I am guaranteed a spot in heaven. Therefore, death is not the end and should not be feared. Story 8. Because I believe in an afterlife where I will meet my family. I think if I do not believe in this, it will ruin my time here. Story 9. Epicurus summed it up best. Death does not concern us, because as long as we exist, death is not here. And once it does come, we no longer exist. Story 10. I have seen a lot of it. I was the youngest in my generation, with a brother who is so much older than I am that his children are about my age. As such, I have witnessed many people age, become ill, and pass away. Illness is the worst part of that, from what I can tell. I internalized it as an inevitability from a very young age and just try to live well. It's not death that I fear. I will probably try to go out on my own terms. It's the emotional baggage that accompanies it. Story 11. I used to be afraid of death. I feared that my loved ones would pass away. However, as I grew older, life put everything in perspective. Now, family members seem like strangers, and once like-minded people are now unfamiliar. Death now appears to be a form of liberation. I believe I will embrace it with a hug or with humility. After all, this is a natural process of life. Story 12. Someone afraid to die is also afraid to live. To die, you must live. I am not afraid to die, as anything can cause death. If I were afraid, I would spend my life in fear. What if crossing the road results in being hit by a car? What if, while eating dinner, I fall off my seat and injure myself with the fork? I just feel like I will die when I die. There is no point in fearing it. Story 13. It cannot happen to me. If it happens, I am no more. I can only experience dying, which I am not looking forward to, but the afterlife is not something I can truly experience. Story 14. I died once and came back. It was incredibly peaceful with white everywhere, and I heard music playing guitar, bass, and drums, but no vocals. Felt more like a transition than anything. I did not feel like me. I was not attached to any personality. I was simply experiencing. I don't remember how I reached this state, but I do recall coming back out of it, feeling like, what just happened? The story behind the near-death experience is a completely different story. Story 15. Because I really miss my grandmother. She was always the one person who would calm my fears by just being around. I think if she were the one to meet me on the other side, I would feel at peace again. Story 16. I'm afraid of how I will die, but I'm not afraid of dying because I know I will spend eternity with Jesus. Story 17. I'm terrified of it. I shouldn't be. I was a funeral director once, so you would think it holds no fear for me. I believe that witnessing the finality of death makes you realize you should avoid it whenever possible. Story 18. Why would I be afraid of dying? I will live in the memories of my friends and family. I am more afraid of suffering. Story 19. My life is less than optimal, which is an understatement. With the beginning of the end of the world happening now, I hope it happens quickly and painlessly. I have already endured more than my fair share of pain. Story 20. I do not want to die a painful death. I am not afraid of dying, though. It happens to us all. There is no point in being scared of it since you cannot do anything about it. Story 21. I personally believe in an afterlife and even reincarnation. I know some do not, but I do, and it keeps me calm when thinking about the end of this life. Additionally, I live with chronic pain and am physically disabled. I am tired, and death would be a blessing these days if it comes. Story 22. I am terrified of death in the existential sense, but not in a practical, day-to-day manner. I do not find myself in many situations where I believe my life is in imminent danger, even when I went skydiving. The thought of not existing, however, fills me with anxiety. Story 23. All men die, but few men truly live. I have had a great life and have no regrets at this point. If God decides it is my time, I accept that. We are not promised a certain number of days. I have had more than some, and my days have been full and blessed, even in difficulties. Story 24. I was dead for billions of years before I was born, and it didn't bother me at all. Now, dying. Story 25. I believe you should not fear being alive. Honestly, there is no reason to be scared of living the most enjoyable life possible. I never take a single day for granted. Do I fear death? No, I do not embrace death either, but that is another matter. Story 26. I mean, things will just be the same as before I was born. It's just nothingness. I didn't have any complaints the first time. Story 27. I'm scared for sure, but I believe in reincarnation. The people I love in this lifetime may meet again. Story 28. Because I have been around it and seen it so much, I have lived a good life and try to be honorable and good. When called home to God, I will always trust, obey, and follow in His love and glory. Story 29. Death is easy. It is living that is hard and causes fear. I know I won't see my grandchildren reach maturity, but that does not cause fear. For me, death is more of a regret. I regret not doing more to be healthy and stay alive longer for my family. They will grieve and I will be gone. Story 30. I do not fear death. I dislike pain, though. Death to me is like birth. I do not remember before birth, and I find comfort in that death. Story 31. Can't fear what you won't experience. The cause and timing are far more worrisome for me than actual death. Post-death, though, there is no fear of nothing. If there is something after death, I believe I am living a life with good morals and behaviors that will hopefully translate to a good afterlife. Either way, why fear the one thing that's certain for us all? Just try to live a life worthy of living and build a legacy, whatever that means to you. Story 32. Death is nothing to fear. I will not be around to experience it. Dying slowly and painfully is what I fear. Story 33. Death and taxes are the only two guarantees in life. I would like to say reincarnation is a thing, but we don't know for sure. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. What matters is the present, enjoying what you can in life, whether it's going skydiving or browsing on social media. Find your joys in life and make the best of it. Story 34. I read a reply on an online forum that said, "Don't be afraid." It made me realize that I don't have a choice. I might as well proceed with dignity and wonder, rather than hesitation and fear. Story 35. Because it is inevitable, there is no sense in being afraid of something I cannot stop from happening. I am sure that subconsciously there is fear. I am old enough to be long past the I am immortal mindset I had as a young Marine, but consciously, I am not afraid of it. Story 36. Death is a natural occurrence that comes for everyone. We can only learn to embrace our lives and live them to the fullest. Story 37. I like to think that it will be similar to how it feels when you are sleeping, which doesn't seem so scary. I also genuinely believe I am a good person and hope that if there is an afterlife, I would find peace. I would be lying if I said there aren't some days when I feel anxious about it, but most of the time I have no real fear. Story 38. Remember, when you are deceased, you do not know you are deceased. It is only painful for others. The same applies when you are lacking intelligence. Ricky Gervais. Story 39. A lot of tragedy has surrounded my life since I was a child, so death is not something to fear. I just respect the inevitable way we will meet at the end of my human chapter. Story 40. Because it has always sounded a lot easier than my life. I fear the possibility of dying in pain, but when I am dead, I think I will be at peace one way or another. Story 41. Why should I be afraid of something I cannot control? As a religious person, my fear is not about the unknown but about whether I have done enough in my life. On the day of judgment, the scales will reveal the true weight of my deeds. Story 42. I have no control over it, so I cannot be bothered to be concerned about something that may happen today or 25 years from now. Story 43. Because I have seen people living lives that are worse than death, and I also don't see a future in my life. I deeply despise the idea of heaven, hell, and the afterlife. It's like selling hope that you don't even know if it's true. While I'm not afraid of death, I have no intention of dying when I know there are people who care about me. I did not ask to be born, but so did everyone. Your life is given, so try to live it to the fullest. For me, death is the sweet release of pain and suffering, but it's an easy way out. I have an impossible dream that I will die of old age, surrounded by people who care about me. I know I will most likely die in a ditch somewhere, cold, sick, frail, hungry, and alone, and I accept that. But I will continue to live this life until no one cares about me anymore. Story 44. 2 reasons. First, I turn my life over to Jesus. Secondly, I wish for death every single day of my life. 17 years ago, my wife suffered a hemorrhagic stroke. The residual brain damage left her functioning like a 10-year-old child. October 4th, 2008 was the last day I was her husband. I became nothing more than her big brother. I never stepped outside of my marriage for intimacy. 17 years is a long time to go without it. We had a beautiful marriage and shared tasks. Now every responsibility is on me. I'm 70 years old, and I'm tired. There is no joy in life anymore. She doesn't want to leave the house even for a ride. The majority of my week is spent sitting on the couch. I'm afraid to leave her alone. Because of the stroke, she has little feeling in her left foot, causing her to fall from time to time. In these 17 years, she has gone from 135 to 240 pounds. If she falls, she can't get herself up. I can't lift her anymore either. I found a special chair that lowers to 3 inches off the floor and then raises to 47 inches. Before that, I had to call the fire department. We live in Southwest Florida now. We moved here from Pennsylvania. I bought this home in 2006, and we were going to be snowbirds. But when it became clear that she could no longer walk upstairs or endure Pennsylvania winters, we sold everything and moved here. We both had children from different marriages. They are all grown and have careers of their own. I miss my kids like crazy. They visit sometimes, but she won't travel, so I don't see them enough. People ask why I don't have someone come and sit with her so I can go out. She doesn't want anyone in the house. It's a miserable life. Story 45. For me, death is more about feeling sad that I wouldn't get to do all the things I want to do, and sad that I would leave all my loved ones behind. They would miss me, and I would miss them. The only true fear is instinctual, but there are other concerns that weigh on my mind more. Death is simply the end of my story, and I have much more living to do first. Story 46. I realize that my identity consists only of my memories, which are not perfect and change all the time. We exist only in this moment. The past is gone. Your past selves, including your childhood versions, are all gone. You currently believe you are someone based solely on fiction constructed from your imperfect memories. Story 47. Death has been overcome by the blood of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ if you accept his free gift and make him your Lord and Savior. Story 48. I am in agreement with the late, great David Lynch that life is a continuum, and what happens is we move on to somewhere else. It is inevitable. However, we will all meet again, as Vera Lynn sang. Story 49. I have lived a full life, been married to my wife for 23 years, and have 2 children who are about to leave the nest. At this point, I feel I have fulfilled my purpose and could die without regrets. I would rather not, as I would like my grandchildren to know me, but if it is my time, I can go in peace. Story 50. I won't care what happens to me after that. I just lament for those I leave behind. There is no point in getting upset about being dead. I wouldn't have feelings anymore. Story 51. I am scared to introduce myself in a group setting, going around the room. I'm not scared to kayak at night in the middle of a river. I'm not scared to walk down a dark alley. I'm not afraid of dying, but I am scared of heights. Fear is a strange thing. Story 52. I have no fear of dying. I don't like the idea of a long and painful suffering. Who would? But death will come. It's inevitable. I fear the things on earth, but the idea of coming to an end and knowing nothing anymore means peace to me. Finally, I think the final chapter of my life will be perfect peace. Leaving it all behind and never waking to know any kind of pain or suffering. Story 53. For me, I fear no such thing. It's a matter of not achieving my highest potential with the gifts I have on our beloved earth. Story 54. I don't want to die anytime soon, no matter how bad my depression gets. However, I do not fear dying because I know that when it is my time, my aunt will be waiting for me. I know she will embrace me with open arms and guide me through it. I never had the chance to say goodbye, and I wish I could have. I look forward to seeing her again, and I almost welcome it so that we can be reunited. Story 55. Because I am truly curious about life and have been for a long time, I have read about near-death experiences extensively. Real or not, everyone describes them as a profound sense of inner peace, seeing the world from a higher perspective, and experiencing a bright light. Additionally, I want to explore whether we can truly reunite with our loved ones again. Story 56. Because it is inevitable. It is also not the end. I choose to believe in life after death, and if it is not real, then so be it. I am dead. Story 57. Because I will be free from all the suffering and injustice in this cruel world. That is why I am hoping to die. Can you imagine how beautiful it is to be free from all these worldly troubles? Story 58. I don't actively think about it, as there isn't much you can do except live healthily and enjoy life for what it is. Story 59. I was hanging out in the kitchen with a group of friends when my consciousness suddenly floated out of my body, and I realized that I am not my body. Since then, I have felt at peace with death. Story 60. Because I cannot die. No one can. No invisible deity is required. You are already immortal. The person you were 2 days ago is gone. Yet here you are. The person you were 20 years ago is also gone. Yet here you are. You are just a collection of atoms interacting. We arbitrarily defined that those atomic interactions stop at a given distance, which we use to define you physically. Your atoms aren't alive, but we arbitrarily decided that a particular arrangement and collection is you. When your parents die, you won't vanish from existence. Their interactions continue, regardless of the arrangement. It has been proven that information cannot be destroyed. You have the causal self, which is as old as time and will persist through time. Already immortal. You also have the informational self, which will persist, and the majority of that information existed before you were even conceived and will endure. I find it curious that people believe in death simply because of a concept called self-awareness, which they can barely define, yet they think existence ceases when a specific pattern of interaction stops, ignoring all other patterns of interaction. Story 61. There are many reasons, but who in their right mind would be scared of death right now? The world has lost its mind. Story 62. I have lived a good life and experienced a lot. Despite living with chronic depression, and having attempted to end my life multiple times when I was younger, I am still here and currently in a good place. I fear living a low quality of life, being bedridden or paralyzed, much more than I fear death. When I die, there is no more fear, so there is nothing to fear regarding death. Story 63. Because there is literally nothing you can do to stop it from happening. You might as well just face it with your chest out and chin up. Story 64. Life offers every imaginable experience, and death is the ultimate and final one. It's impossible to determine if death is bad or good in itself, as the only context we have is the circumstances surrounding it and its impact on those in our circle of influence. Why fear death when it is ultimately a personal and intimate experience that only you undergo? Story 65. It's not something you experience. It just is. The same way all that time before I was born wasn't scary. I had no feelings, knowledge, or sense that anything existed. It just was, and I wasn't. The act of dying scares me, mainly because there are seemingly very few painless ways, and even a lot of the ones we assume are painless, we don't know for sure. They just appear that way to onlookers, or that's how they are described. But death doesn't scare me. I figure it'll be like those nights when you go to sleep and don't dream, except I won't wake up. Story 66. I have outlived what doctors said I would by more than 25 years. I have experienced an incredible life. When death comes, I will greet it like an old friend. Story 67. I have a condition that puts me at risk of anaphylaxis several times a month. I have died several times and had to be revived. At one point, I stopped caring. I will take measures to save my life, but if it happens, it happens. There is no point in fearing the inevitable. Story 68. Buddhism. And I am not even a Buddhist. All your thoughts are garbage. You may think that some of them are good, but you should consider the possibility that all your thoughts are garbage. Ajahn Sumedho. Story 69. I'm not afraid because it is natural. Life is hard, and I am very tired. I think I will welcome it. I just need to get my son grown up. Then there will be no need to worry. Story 70. Are you afraid of falling asleep? Aren't you worried you will stop existing? I don't fear death because I don't believe in a place of eternal punishment. Story 71. Because I don't exactly believe in free will. It's a perspective based not on religion but on science. I believe everything influences everything else in some way, shape, or form, including our decisions. So if I were to die, then I believe at that moment I was meant to die. This ideology has been tough to understand, especially since I adopted it after my best friend took her own life. Story 72. Because I'm not the only one who will. Everyone will as well, so I don't feel left out, to be honest. Plus, it's something we can't control. Story 73. I struggled with suicidal thoughts during most of my adolescence, and I still experience those feelings. I see death as an inevitable event that I somewhat welcome. I believe suicide can be a selfish act when loved ones are still present, but merely existing and waiting is not a viable alternative. Story 74. Because it is nothingness. Nothing will be felt. Everything will be forgotten. I will be eaten by worms and will know nothing of it. Story 75. Why should I be? There's not much I can do about it unless we figure out how to avoid death. I would be in line for that. Story 76. Because everything I was dealing with immediately becomes someone else's problem, and I have no spouse or children making me feel guilty in that regard. Story 77. I think of it as similar to going under. You're here 1 minute and the next second you're gone. I've seen many people during their final moments. There is nothing to fear. It's peaceful and relieving. The end. Story 78. My body feels like a lemon. I rely on modern medicine to keep it functioning. As a result, I feel a bit tired and wish to escape this body. Story 79. I have come to terms with the fact that it is part of the deal. Everyone has to go sometime, and worrying about it doesn't really change anything. I try to focus on enjoying the time I have rather than worrying about when it will end. Feels much more peaceful that way. I think it is all about perspective. Death is just another part of life. It doesn't mean it is all over when it happens. Maybe there is something else after, maybe not, but either way, I don't want to waste time stressing about it. I would rather be here now, enjoying life, than living in fear of something that is inevitable. Story 80. Death is afraid of me. I am only wearing black until they create something darker. Story 81. It comes to us all and is inevitable. Most people do not fear death itself, but rather the finality of it, such as leaving loved ones behind, the potential pain associated with it, and the desire to have achieved more in life. Story 82. If you have a chronic condition where the pain can become unbearable, you may lower your guard toward death. Thankfully, I am doing better now, but my fear of death still lingers. Story 83. We all essentially die every time we go to sleep. It doesn't hurt and we have no memory of it. It's exactly the same but longer. Story 84. I am nearly 30 years old and have been profoundly depressed since I was 11. I had to find a way to cope with that because I made a promise to someone important that I intend to keep as best as I can. Therefore, suicide is not an option and never has been. However, that does not mean I will not openly welcome death when it comes for me. As much as I would love to leave this life, I have responsibilities, regardless of how much I secretly resent them. So no, I do not fear death. I do not fear much at all. It can take me when the time is right, and then I will finally experience the sweet release of oblivion instead of the constant internal suffering that defines my existence. Story 85. It is simply a natural occurrence that will happen, and there is no way to avoid it. At some point, the time will come, and that is all there is to it. Story 86. Sometimes life can be very challenging, and the thought of death can be surprisingly comforting, even if you are not suicidal. Story 87. I have been close to death a couple of times, and I feel it is just another phase of the journey. I do fear dying a painful death, but if I can help it, I won't. Story 88. And I am not afraid of dying. Any time will do. I don't mind. Why should I be afraid of dying? There is no reason for it. You have to go sometime. Story 89. Why should I fear death? If I exist, then death does not. If death exists, then I do not. Why should I fear that which can only exist when I do not? Story 90. For the same reason, I wasn't afraid of being born. Once you're dead, there's nothing. You have no consciousness. The scary part is not dying a slow, painful death. Death is the easy part. Story 91. I have accepted that at any point, I can go, especially since I have personally been in many situations that could have ended my life. From being shot at multiple times to car accidents I could have died in, and also certain health conditions I currently face that can be fatal at any moment. So it's not so much that I don't fear death. It's more like I go day by day expecting the worst and dealing with it. Story 92. Afraid? Oh no, I'm excited. Bring it on. I'm thankful my life is half over at 45. There's really nothing here for me. I'm happily single, without kids, debt, or diseases. I consider myself not bad looking, but for the rest of my life, I look forward to dealing with rent, a mortgage, dating, and taxes. To me, I'd rather not handle any of it. Story 93. It's part of being human. I don't need an imagined afterlife to cushion what is inherently part of my humanity. If there is something beyond death, it is unknowable, no matter who thinks they know. Story 94. I want to die. Death itself doesn't scare me. The effects it has on others do. The thought of someone finding me always keeps me alive. If I could die without anyone knowing, I would be gone. I would be gone by now. Story 95. Life is much harder than death. I lived with chronic pain for years, and death would have been a welcome relief. However, being alive is far scarier. Story 96. It is going to happen one day, no matter what I do, so worrying about it will not help. I am obviously afraid of it happening unexpectedly, but I believe and hope that when the time comes, I will be ready. Story 97. Not being afraid of death requires overcoming traumatic experiences and developing an understanding of mental pain. Many individuals take their own lives every day, and the majority of them are male. Females are more likely to attempt suicide but not follow through, while males are more likely to complete the act. Story 98. I grew up in a house with a terminally ill sibling. I have had the shadow of death living with me my whole life. It makes you a bit more indifferent about it. Story 99. I know I will likely get trolled for my answer, but it's the only one I have. I trust in Jesus Christ, that he was who he claimed to be, lived rightly, and died the death I deserve for my sin. He promised those who trust in him that he would give them new life and one day return to heal the world broken by sin, and that sin and death would be no more. My body would be brought back to life, unable to get sick, hurt, or die anymore, and I would live forever with Jesus, enjoying him and the restored world God created for humans to enjoy and his glory. I'm not looking to engage in a flame war with anyone, so please save your criticisms unless you're genuinely curious about the, admittedly, outrageous things I believe, just for fun. I'm not a Republican, and I absolutely love science. Story 100. It has to happen someday, so there is no point in being afraid of it. I don't want to suffer before dying. I want a quick death. Story 101. I believe most people are not afraid of death itself. They fear an imagined pain they think they will experience just moments before death. Story 102. Because I no longer have anyone who depends on me. I put my life on hold for 25 years to look after my parents while all my friends moved on and started families of their own. My parents have both passed away now. It's just me and my dog, Charlie. I have a brother who has his own family. Once my dog crosses the Rainbow Bridge, then I will have nothing left to care about. At that time, death wouldn't bother me at all. I would go, safe in the knowledge that I'm not leaving anyone behind who needs me. Story 103. Death is beautiful. It is comfort and peace. It takes away all suffering and unnecessary attachments. After all, it is the beginning, not an end. Story 104. I am somewhat afraid. There are no dreams, no thoughts, just the emptiness of no longer existing. It is difficult to imagine, but it will happen regardless. There is no point in worrying about it. Story 105. I only know that I passed out for a nap because I woke up. I see death as largely the same. I won't know it. Worrying about how it happens can have some merit, but that doesn't matter. Story 106. People who claim they are not afraid of death are not being truthful. They don't understand themselves. If someone acknowledges that death is natural but then learns they will die tomorrow, they will likely feel extreme fear. We don't fear death because its timing is unknown. We believe we have plenty of time before it occurs. If suddenly a higher power were to reveal our death date, no one would be able to live their life happily. Story 107. Because after death is the same as before birth. I have already experienced the nothingness of the void. Maybe when I go, my first thought shall be, hold on, I know this place, I have been here before. Story 108. I have seen enough people describe near-death experiences and past life experiences to believe in reincarnation. I do not believe in death, only in the next life. Story 109. What is there to fear? I will not be around to experience it. Dying sounds unpleasant at best. The few instances I have encountered were not nice at all. But death? I have never heard anyone complain about being dead. Story 110. I am not afraid of being gone, as I believe there is something for all of us after our lives on earth. However, I am afraid of how I will die, especially if it is not of old age. Story 111. I fear lying on my deathbed, regretting that I have not lived my own life but rather one shaped by others' expectations. Death will inevitably come, and I have no choice but to prepare myself. The sooner I start, the better. Story 112. I'm more afraid of living. I have degenerative disc disease, and I am unable to work and pay bills. I am 48 years old. I guess God doesn't want me yet, but living feels like suffering. Story 113. What is the point? It is not like we can avoid it. Everyone who has ever lived will die. That is one of the few certainties in life. Story 114. I am not afraid of death because I am vastly more afraid of not living a life or doing something worth dying for. Story 115. It's just returning to the state of existence I held before I was born. I wasn't bothered by it the last time. Story 116. When you feel like your life is a nightmare, the thought of it ending and not having to endure it anymore is relieving. I'm glad we can die, because if I were stuck in this body and brain forever, I would scream nonstop. Story 117. I am afraid of death, but I dislike my life so much that I am willing to confront it, even though I feel scared. Story 118. Because right now life is worse. I keep going on hoping it will get better, but still, if death comes, I am ready. Story 119. Because it is inevitable and everyone dies. I have no delusions of an afterlife. It is immature to not face the reality that we will die, and everything that is us will cease to exist. Story 120. You could phrase this question as, why are you so afraid of death that you will not even admit to yourself being afraid of it? Story 121. I am not afraid because it is part of life. We all die at some point and there is nothing we can do about it. I would rather live my life than be in fear all the time. Story 122. The main purpose of fear is to help me avoid harm. Death cannot be avoided, so fearing it is a waste of time. Story 123. Death is nothing to us, for when we exist, death is not. And when death exists, we are not. Epicurus, in his letter to Menicius, which was written around the 4th century BCE, conveys a simple idea. While you are alive, death is irrelevant because it has not happened. When you are dead, you no longer exist to experience suffering or worry. Therefore, fearing death is irrational. Fun fact: I am still afraid, and I think it's fine to be afraid of it. However, it's a worry we humans have while living, and it's not just due to instinct. That is only part of it. It is the unknown of what comes after that, with our thinking, intelligent mind, we still cannot solve. Story 124. I know many people here don't believe in God, but there are numerous proofs that Jesus lived and actually resurrected. I have nothing to lose, and neither do you. Additionally, there are many miracles and testimonies. I truly believe he lives, and I will because of that. Story 125. I know many people here don't believe in God, but there are numerous proofs that Jesus lived and actually resurrected. I have nothing to lose, and you don't either. There are also the miracles and testimonies. I truly believe he lives, and I will because of that. Story 126. I know many people here don't believe in God, but there are numerous proofs that Jesus lived and resurrected. I have nothing to lose, and neither do you. Also, consider the miracles and testimonies. I truly believe he lives, and I will because of that. Story 127. They told them to investigate the unicycles, penny farthings, and every other group or gathering. They did not like the episode when they removed the mask from the internet's face on Scooby-Doo. Story 128. I don't remember anything before being born. I won't remember anything once I am turned off. All I honestly see it as is peace. Every second we are alive, we experience pain. Story 129. I fear the actual moment and process of death because no one wants to go through that. However, I do not fear death because I believe that Jesus died on the cross to pay for all of my sins, fully forgiving me of all offenses and wrongdoings against God. Because of his death and sacrifice on the cross for me, I now have a place in heaven and eternal fellowship with God. Story 130. I will not be sad that I died. I will just not exist. However, I fear a slow death or spending years suffering in a helpless state. I knew someone who lived his last 10 years in total paralysis. He could only hear and move his eyes. That's a nightmare to me because you can't end it, even if you want to. Story 131. Because we do not know what actually happens. Fear of death is fear of the unknown, similar to being afraid of the dark. The only thing I know for sure is that experience continues even if the symbiotic relationship between me and my body ends. Story 132. Death is just a new beginning. All energy transforms but never dies. My personal belief is that the soul is the energy, and the body is just the vessel to transport you to your next transformation. Story 133. Because it is going to happen whether we like it or not. There was a time before my birth and first memories when I existed only as a potential within the all. Then there was my birth, life, and death, and I will return from where I came. My death will not bother me at all. It will affect those whose lives I touched and those with whom I shared close bonds in life. Do not be afraid or resist the Reaper. Story 134. I would be lying if I said I wasn't. I just hope for all my friends, family, loved ones, and all the good people around the world that dying isn't extremely painful, slow, and agonizing. Story 135. What's the point? I already want to live as long as I can, within reason, so being afraid of it is not keeping me from considering suicide. As far as I can tell, that's the only thing the concept of fear has going for it. Story 136. Everything alive will die. I want to be able to enjoy and embrace every part of my life, including my death. Story 137. God, I believe that if a person is more spiritually inclined, they are less likely to fear death itself. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.